Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, we drift into the strange and beautiful realm of language, the secret codes that connect minds through space and time, and even between different species. Language is so much more than just words. It is movement, it is feeling, it is the myriad of subtle cues that we are only just beginning to understand. It is all the astonishing ways that living beings share truth, ideas, compassion, and identity. Throughout the animal kingdom, there are more types of communication than you would have ever thought possible. You will hear about stories carried through air and water, signals in the darkness, songs that shift with the seasons, and patterns that move through entire communities. Language is not simply something we learn. It is something we grow into. Something we share with the world around us in ways we rarely notice. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, breathe softly. Let your eyes grow heavy, and gently allow yourself to drift into sleep. Let's begin. Human language may be the most complex behavior on Earth. It weaves sound, memory, imagination, and social understanding into a single act that feels effortless from the inside. When you speak, you are choosing from tens of thousands of words stored in your mind, arranging them according to invisible rules that you were never formally taught, and adapting them in real time to another person's reactions. At the same time, your tongue, lips, lungs, and vocal folds coordinate in intricate patterns measured in tiny fractions of a second. Behind all of this, networks across your brain light up to track meaning, intent, emotion, and social nuance. From these simple vibrations in the air, listeners reconstruct entire scenes, invisible ideas, even unreal worlds that never existed before you described them. No other known behavior combines so many layers of structure, creativity, and coordination into something that can unfold in a single breath. Some animals use grammar-like structures to communicate. In several species, calls and signals are not just random noises strung together. They follow patterns that resemble a basic kind of syntax. Certain monkeys, for example, combine specific alarm calls in set orders to shift meaning, turning a simple warning into something closer to a phrase that hints at both danger type and urgency. Some songbirds arrange motifs into sequences that follow consistent positional rules, so that a particular note can only appear at the start or only at the end of a song. These patterns are learned, not hardwired, which means young animals must listen, practice, and refine their sequences over time. The result is a communication system that is not merely a list of calls pointing to objects, but a flexible set of building blocks. It hints that the urge to organize sound into structure is not uniquely human, even if our own grammars are far richer. Babies understand the rhythm of speech before they know words. Long before they can say even a simple word, infants are already experts in the musical flow of the language around them. They have spent months surrounded by muffled voices in the womb, absorbing rises and falls in pitch, the gentle pulsing of syllables, and the pauses that divide phrases. After birth, they turn their heads toward voices that match the rhythm of their native tongue and relax more easily to speech that carries familiar patterns. Caregivers naturally exaggerate these rhythms when they speak to babies, stretching vowels, softening consonants, and adding a lilting melody that helps little ears slice the stream of sound into manageable units. Even without vocabulary, infants can sense where one phrase ends and another begins, and can tell one language family from another simply through cadence. By the time the first clear word appears, the foundation is already laid, built from months of listening to the music of speech. whales sing songs that slowly evolve over time. In the open ocean, some whales produce long, elaborate sequences of moans, trills, and groans that can last for many minutes and repeat in precise patterns. Within a region, males often share a common song, as if they belong to a vast drifting choir. Yet the song is not fixed. Over weeks and months, small variations appear, a new phrase here, a modified pattern there. If these changes catch on, other whales gradually adopt them, and the shared song shifts its shape. Eventually, an entire population might abandon an old tune in favor of a new one that has swept across thousands of kilometers of water. These changes do not follow the rhythm of genetics, but the rhythm of culture, traveling through learning rather than inheritance. The ocean becomes a medium not only for sound, but for evolving traditions, where a chorus of giants collectively edits and remixes its own music. Some birds learn dialects from their neighbors. In many songbird species, the melodies that fill a forest or a city park are not purely instinctive. Young birds listen carefully to adults around them and imitate their patterns during a sensitive window of development. If a bird grows up in one valley, its song may follow a particular style, with characteristic twists of pitch or timing. In a different valley, the same species might favor a slightly different version. These geographic variants become recognizable dialects, audible maps of where a bird learned to sing. Birds that disperse into new territories can carry their childhood melodies with them, sometimes blending them with local variations. Over time, neighboring groups can develop stable regional identities based on sound alone. For birds, these dialects are not just ornament. They can influence mate choice, social bonding, and territory disputes, turning simple song into a marker of belonging and history. Your brain predicts words before you hear them. During conversation, you are never just waiting passively for sound to arrive. Neural activity shows that the brain constantly anticipates what is likely to come next. As someone begins a sentence, your mind starts narrowing down possible continuations based on experience, context, and world knowledge. If a familiar phrase is unfolding, motor and auditory areas quietly prepare for the final word even before it is spoken. When that expected word does arrive, processing becomes faster and more efficient, freeing resources for other tasks like tracking tone or reading facial expressions. If something unexpected appears instead, your brain briefly registers surprise and rapidly updates its internal model. This predictive dance happens so quickly that you rarely notice it, but it shapes the feeling of smooth, flowing understanding. Language comprehension is not simply reacting to sound. It is a continuous act of active guessing and rapid correction, unfolding with every sentence you hear. Bees dance to share maps of the world. Inside a dark hive, forager bees return from their journeys carrying more than nectar. On the vertical surface of the comb, they perform a looping movement known as the waggle dance. The angle of the waggle phase relative to gravity mirrors the direction of the food source relative to the position of the sun, while the duration of this movement reflects distance. Nestmates press close, feeling the vibrations through their legs and antennae, building a mental picture of a location they have never seen. Temperature, vigor, and accompanying sounds add further nuance, hinting at quality and urgency. This communication allows a colony to focus its efforts on the richest flowers without every individual exploring blindly. It also ties the inner world of the hive to the shifting patterns of light, landscape, and season outside. In these small arcs and waggles, a collective navigational intelligence is made visible. Humans can understand speech even when half the sounds are missing. Everyday listening conditions are far from perfect. Conversations echo in crowded rooms, traffic roars in the distance, and other voices overlap and blur. Yet you rarely feel as if you are piecing together a broken signal. Your auditory system uses multiple strategies at once to bridge the gaps. It tracks the broad contour of loudness and pitch, senses the rough shape of syllables, and leans heavily on knowledge of words and typical phrase patterns. Even when noise masks important fragments, higher brain areas can infer what must have been said by comparing the incoming partial information with stored expectations. Listeners also unconsciously watch lips and facial movements for extra cues that refine the message. The result is a perception of speech that feels solid and continuous, even when the actual acoustic input is full of holes. Your experience of fluent conversation is built from clever reconstruction rather than perfect clarity. Elephants communicate with vibrations through the ground. These enormous animals do not rely only on trumpeting calls that carry through the air. They also produce very low-frequency rumbles that travel as seismic waves through soil and rock. Sensitive structures in their feet and trunk allow them to detect these ground-borne signals over remarkable distances. A herd can become aware of distant thunder, approaching vehicles, or the calls of other elephants long before such events are visible. Within their own social network, these vibrations help coordinate movement, warn of potential threats, and maintain connection between scattered family groups. Because the signals travel differently depending on terrain and moisture, herds may learn the particular acoustic character of their home ranges as part of their communication system. What appears from the outside as a quiet landscape can in fact be alive with hidden conversations flowing beneath the surface, tying individuals together through the earth they share. Some languages have no words for left or right. In certain communities, speakers navigate their world using fixed directions anchored to the landscape rather than to their own bodies. Instead of saying that an object is to your left, you might say it is to the north of your hand or to the seaward side of the table. Children raised in such systems learn to keep track of orientation with astonishing skill, updating their sense of direction whenever they move, even indoors or in unfamiliar places. Everyday conversation becomes a constant exercise in mapping the environment, and speakers often remain aware of the path of the sun and the layout of landmarks without conscious effort. This way of speaking appears to shape thought itself. People who rely on these terms can solve certain spatial reasoning tasks more easily, as if language has trained their attention to align with geography. A simple choice of words reshapes how space is experienced. Octopuses signal with changing colors. Their skin holds a living canvas of pigments and light reflecting cells that can shift in an instant. With these tools, an octopus can ripple patterns across its body that move like waves over sand or spread like blooming ink. These displays are not only camouflage. They also serve as signals to other octopuses, especially during close encounters where touch, posture, and color form a layered conversation. A bright flash can assert dominance, while calm mottling may indicate curiosity or neutrality. During mating, sequences of pulses and shifting hues help individuals negotiate distance and intent. Because these creatures see the world through touch and texture as much as sight, their visual signals work together with subtle arm gestures and movements along the seafloor. Communication becomes a blend of body language, physical contact, and rapid color play, forming one of the most fluid and multidimensional systems found in the animal world. There are languages spoken only at night. In some cultures, certain forms of speech are reserved for the hours after sunset, when darkness softens the landscape and community life becomes quiet and reflective. These night languages often emerge in places where daily work requires different communication styles than evening rituals or storytelling traditions. In the dark, voices carry differently, and listeners rely on softer tones and slower rhythms that suit the surrounding stillness. Some night languages are used for sacred stories that are believed to hold greater power when spoken under the stars. Others exist to maintain privacy, as quiet conversations can unfold without disturbing sleeping households. These languages shift vocabulary, rhythm, and even grammatical structures, creating an experience that feels separate from daytime communication. As the sky brightens, speakers naturally return to their usual speech. Night languages fade until evening returns, carrying an air of mystery that links language with atmosphere, memory, and communal time. Dolphins call each other by individual signature whistles. Within a pod, every dolphin develops a personal whistle pattern that functions much like a spoken name. These whistles are shaped early in life, influenced by family calls yet unique enough to mark one individual from another. When dolphins are separated, they often repeat these signature whistles to reunite or confirm location. Other dolphins can imitate a companion's signature whistle to gain attention, a behavior that shows a remarkable level of social awareness. These calls travel well underwater, where sound moves faster and farther than in air, allowing pods to stay connected even in murky or dim conditions. Over time, dolphins learn the whistles of multiple companions and respond selectively, showing that recognition extends beyond immediate family. Their underwater world becomes a web of individual identities, carried through shifting currents and rolling waves, where each call reflects social bonds that can last for many seasons. You can hear a smile in someone's voice. Human vocal tone carries subtle clues that reveal emotion, even without any visual cues. When someone smiles, tiny changes occur in the shape of the mouth, the tension of facial muscles, and the openness of the throat. These adjustments brighten the sound, adding warmth and lift that listeners interpret instantly. The effect can be heard during phone calls, where no facial expressions are visible, yet you can sense when someone is pleased or amused. Even infants respond to these tonal shifts, relaxing when they hear a voice that carries gentle positivity. These acoustic signals work across languages and cultures, suggesting that the connection between facial posture and vocal quality is deeply tied to our biology. A smile reshapes breath flow and resonance in ways the listener's brain recognizes without conscious effort. It becomes a tiny bridge between people, carrying emotion quietly through air and shared attention. Some languages use only whistles. In certain mountainous or forested regions, communities have developed fully functional systems of communication built entirely from melodic whistles. These whistled languages are not simple signals. They mirror the rhythm, pitch patterns, and phrasing of spoken speech, translating complex ideas into long carrying tones that can travel across valleys or dense vegetation. Speakers can discuss everyday matters, coordinate work, or deliver messages to faraway listeners without raising their voices. Because whistles carry farther than spoken words, they allow communication over distances that would otherwise require shouting or travel. Learning such a system requires understanding how to reshape sentences into musical contours that hold meaning even when consonants and vowels disappear. Although they sound like playful songs to outsiders, these languages support conversation rich in detail and nuance, demonstrating how humans adapt communication to the challenges of geography. Plants respond to vibrations and may distinguish different sounds. Although lacking ears or voices, plants are far from silent. Their tissues can sense vibrations that travel through air or soil, allowing them to respond in ways that may help survival. Gentle vibrations resembling the buzz of a pollinating insect can stimulate blossoms to release more pollen. Harsh vibrations from chewing insects can trigger chemical defenses, strengthening leaves before damage spreads. Some species appear to differentiate between these sources, adjusting their responses according to context. Even root tips can change growth direction when exposed to specific vibration patterns, as if mapping the acoustic qualities of surrounding soil. These reactions unfold slowly, but they show that plants perceive more of their environment than once believed. Instead of passive beings, they participate in complex ecological conversations, using mechanical cues that move through the world continuously. Prairie dogs produce calls that describe detailed characteristics of predators. In the grasslands where they live, danger can approach from many directions. Prairie dogs have developed vocalizations that go far beyond simple alarm signals. Their calls vary depending on the type of predator, its size, its speed, and even its coat color. A different pattern is used for a hawk compared with a fox or an unfamiliar human figure. Members of a colony respond differently to each call, adjusting their escape paths to best avoid the specific threat. Young prairie dogs learn the system by listening to adults and practicing their own versions as they grow. The result is a communication network that acts almost like a spoken description of the outside world. These small animals create messages rich enough to guide collective action, turning scattered burrows into a coordinated community able to survive in open and unpredictable terrain. Some human cultures use gesture as a complete language system. In certain communities, gesture-based communication is not only a supplement to spoken words, but a fully developed linguistic tradition. These systems arise in places where silence is valued, where long-distance visibility is important, or where diverse language groups interact closely. Gestural languages contain structured rules, vocabulary, and expressive range equal to spoken languages. Skilled users can describe events, express emotion, negotiate trade, or convey ritual knowledge entirely through movement. Because these languages rely on sight rather than sound, they unfold in broad strokes or delicate finger motions that carry the same richness as spoken sentences. Conversation can happen across a field, through a crowd, or in situations where noise must be avoided. In these cultures, gesture becomes a bridge between groups and an art form that links communication with physical grace, memory, and shared understanding. Parrots can create new sound combinations they were never taught. Unlike many animals that mimic sounds only as fixed patterns, parrots have the ability to take learned elements and rearrange them into novel sequences. This creative flexibility reflects their advanced vocal control and their strong social intelligence. When interacting with humans or with other parrots, they often invent new calls inspired by familiar noises, blending rhythms or altering pitches in ways that resemble improvisation. These innovations can spread within flocks as companions adopt newly created sounds into their own repertoires. Young parrots listen closely and experiment persistently, refining their productions through repetition and feedback. Their vocal world becomes a space of exploration, filled with playful combinations and unexpected phrases that reveal a mind engaged in constant auditory problem-solving. Wolves sing in harmonies that reinforce pack identity. A howling pack produces an intricate chorus in which each wolf adds a distinct tonal layer. These overlapping voices create a sound larger than any single member, making the group seem more numerous to distant listeners. The harmonies also strengthen internal bonds. When wolves howl together, they reaffirm affiliation and coordinate movement across wide territories. Each voice carries subtle information about age, size, and emotional state, allowing packmates to recognize one another even when separated by forests or hills. Young wolves learn to harmonize gradually, weaving their developing voices into the family chorus. Over time, the pattern becomes a signature unique to that pack. The shared sound shapes identity, guiding cooperation and ensuring that scattered individuals can find their way back to one another through the dark and shifting wilderness. Some languages build entire sentences inside a single word. In these linguistic traditions, what looks like a single unit on the page can secretly contain an entire storyline. Speakers stack many tiny pieces of meaning together, each one adding information about who is involved, what is happening, how, where, and even why. A single utterance can encode subject, object, time, direction, manner, and emotion, all fused into a flowing shape that is spoken in one breath. Children grow up hearing these long forms as natural expressions, then slowly learn to peel them apart in their minds, discovering that each small fragment carries a precise function. This style of communication suits cultures where careful description matters and where context may shift quickly in the landscape. Because so much detail lives inside one form, speakers can adjust nuance by adding or removing fragments, like adding branches to a growing tree. The result is speech that feels compact on the surface, yet holds a deep internal architecture that rewards close listening. Fireflies use patterns of light as a form of synchronized signaling. On warm nights, their bodies become tiny lanterns that pulse with meaning. Each flash is created by a controlled chemical reaction within special organs, switched on and off with exquisite timing. Members of a single species share characteristic rhythms so that potential partners can find one another among many glowing points. In some regions, males gather in large groups and begin to coordinate, adjusting their flashes until entire forests appear to breathe in light, brightening and dimming in slow waves. This coordination is not guided by a leader. It emerges because each insect subtly alters its timing in response to neighbors. Females watch from darker perches, responding with brief answering glows that must appear at just the right moment to be understood. The night sky becomes a living conversation where information about identity, readiness, and location is written in bursts of gentle radiance. Humans detect emotion in a voice before understanding the words. When another person begins to speak, the very first thing your nervous system notices is not grammar or vocabulary, but qualities such as pitch, roughness, and intensity. These features travel along rapid pathways to areas of the brain that specialize in emotional evaluation. Within a heartbeat or two, you may already sense whether the speaker is calm, irritated, playful, or afraid, even if the message is in a language you do not know. This early reading shapes what happens next. Your attention sharpens or relaxes, your muscles prepare for closeness or distance, and your expectations about the conversation adjust in advance of the actual content. This sensitivity is so refined that people can often distinguish genuine warmth from forced politeness using sound alone. Voices become emotional landscapes, and your mind is constantly scanning those landscapes for signs of safety, danger, or welcome, long before individual syllables resolve into meaning. Certain monkeys combine calls to create new meanings. In some forests, groups of small primates use more than isolated cries. They string together specific call types in particular orders, creating sequences that carry information greater than the sum of their parts. One element might refer to a general threat, another to movement, another to location. When combined, these fragments can direct group members to climb, scatter, or gather in a safer place. Careful field observation reveals that the same elements, rearranged, do not trigger the same reactions, which shows that order matters. Young monkeys spend time observing how elders respond to each pattern, gradually learning which combinations are effective in real situations. Over time, a repertoire emerges that begins to resemble a primitive rule system, where certain building blocks can appear only in certain positions. These patterns suggest that the roots of structured communication may reach much deeper into the primate family than spoken language alone would imply. Jellyfish create pressure waves that signal presence to other marine life. Each time a jellyfish contracts its bell, it pushes water backward and glides forward with a gentle surge. To human eyes, this appears as simple drifting, but to animals equipped with sensitive lateral lines or motion detectors, These pulses are clear signatures in the surrounding fluid. Fish and other creatures can feel the slight changes in flow and pressure as the jellyfish moves, allowing them to sense its size, direction, and speed without needing direct visual contact. Some species produce particularly regular pulsing patterns that become recognizable within their local habitat, turning movement itself into a kind of identity marker. Predators can learn to avoid painful stinging tentacles by interpreting these signals early, while potential prey may notice when a jellyfish approaches and adjust their paths. Even without intentional messaging, the physics of motion creates a constant stream of information that shapes how marine communities arrange themselves in the water. Some human languages use click sounds found nowhere else on Earth. These systems rely on brief suction releases inside the mouth that produce sharp, percussive bursts of sound. To produce them clearly, speakers coordinate tongue position, lip shape, and airflow with extraordinary precision, transforming the mouth into an intricate musical instrument. Within these communities, such sounds are not special effects, but everyday components of words, woven smoothly among more familiar consonants and vowels. Different clicks may be distinguished by where the tongue touches and how quickly the closure is released, giving rise to families of related sounds that can carry subtle contrasts in meaning. For outsiders, these languages can seem almost impossible to imitate, yet children born into them master the full inventory in early life. These traditions show how flexible human anatomy truly is, and how cultural history chooses which parts of that flexibility to explore, turning physical possibility into a stable, shared system of expression. Ravens modify calls depending on who is listening. These birds live in complex social environments where allies, rivals, and strangers all share the same skies. Their vocal behavior reflects this complexity. A raven may use a low, inviting croak when calling a trusted partner to a food source, but switch to harsher tones when warning an intruder away. When juveniles are nearby, calls often soften and become more repetitive, as if encouraging hesitant birds to approach. In experiments, ravens even adjust their calls when they know that hidden competitors might overhear, masking the exact location of a resource. Over years of interaction, individuals learn one another's vocal habits, building memories of who tends to be reliable, aggressive, cooperative, or deceptive. Sound becomes a record of personality and history. Every call carries traces of past encounters, as well as present intentions, allowing these birds to manage relationships that can last for many breeding seasons. Some ants communicate through vibrational drumming. Inside dark nests where sunlight never reaches and air may carry little sound, ants still need a way to coordinate work and respond to danger. Certain species solve this through rhythmic tapping. Workers strike their heads, abdomens, or specialized body parts against the tunnel walls or nest chambers, sending minute tremors through soil and plant fibers. Other ants detect these tremors with receptors in their legs and bodies, interpreting them as messages. A rapid series may signal alarm and call soldiers to a breach, while a slower pattern might recruit helpers to move food or reinforce a new chamber. Because vibrations travel well through narrow, twisting passages, this method allows messages to reach distant parts of the colony, where scent trails would be slow or prone to distortion. Over time, the entire underground structure functions like a resonant communication network built from earth and living bodies. Human brains automatically repair broken speech without conscious effort. When a word is partially obscured by a cough, an object dropping in the background, or a brief electronic glitch, your perception rarely falters. Inside your head, networks rapidly evaluate the fragmentary sound, compare it with the surrounding context, and insert the most plausible missing piece. This process happens even when the missing portion is completely replaced by noise. Listeners often insist they heard the full word, unaware that their brains supplied it. Neural imaging studies reveal that language areas respond as though the intact sound had been present, showing that the reconstruction is not just a conscious guess, but an automatic internal rewrite of reality. This capacity relies on years of experience with word patterns, typical phrases, and everyday situations. The more familiar the context, the more confidently the system fills the gap. Communication in the real world is therefore a collaboration between imperfect signals and powerful internal prediction, with perception shaped as much by memory as by acoustics. Bats share information about food sources with specialized calls. In the darkness of night, these animals navigate with pulses of high-frequency sound that bounce from leaves, insects, and branches, painting rich acoustic images of their surroundings. On top of this sensory stream, some species add distinct calls that are not just for orientation, but for social coordination. After discovering a productive patch of insects or ripe fruit, a bat may emit vocalizations that attract group members from nearby roosts or foraging paths. These calls can vary in structure depending on the quality of the find, encouraging others when resources are abundant and remaining more restrained when competition would be costly. Young bats learn the meaning of these signals by following experienced individuals and associating particular patterns with successful feeding. Over time, the colony develops shared expectations about which sounds predict good hunting. The night sky becomes a network of guiding voices, where information about opportunity travels alongside the echoes of wings and prey. Some languages change completely depending on social status. In certain communities, the way you speak shifts dramatically depending on whom you are addressing. A single idea can have entirely different vocabulary, grammar, and even rhythm, depending on whether the listener is a child, a respected elder, a stranger, or a member of another social group. Speakers master several parallel linguistic systems and switch seamlessly between them throughout the day. These changes are not small adjustments. They can involve completely different sets of verb forms, alternate pronouns, or specialized words reserved for formal occasions. Children absorb this complexity early as they notice how adults speak differently in varied circumstances. And by adolescence, they move confidently between styles without conscious effort. These layered systems reflect cultural values that place strong emphasis on respect, hierarchy, and relational awareness. Through language, individuals signal kindness, humility, authority, or closeness long before the content of a conversation becomes clear. Speech becomes a living map of social ties, woven into daily life with grace and precision. Whistling languages can carry across mountain ranges. In rugged landscapes where valleys cut deep into stone and villages rest far apart, communities have developed systems of communication built entirely from pure whistles. These tones travel much farther than spoken words, gliding across cliffs and ridges with remarkable clarity. The whistles preserve the pitch patterns of the spoken language, allowing entire messages to be transmitted over distances that might otherwise require hours of climbing. Shepherds can call to one another across huge expanses. Families can signal important news from one hillside to another without leaving their fields. Learning this skill requires intense auditory sensitivity, since small shifts in melody can alter meaning. Some communities hold competitions where individuals demonstrate long-distance communication, sending flowing sequences of whistles across dramatic landscapes. These traditions show how humans adapt language to their environment, turning the natural acoustics of mountains into a powerful communication system that stretches across the open sky. Frogs use ultrasonic calls that humans cannot hear. In rainforests and riverbanks, some frog species rely on frequencies that rise far above the range of human hearing. These ultrasonic signals help them communicate in environments filled with heavy rain, fast-flowing water, and the constant hum of insects. Lower-pitched calls might be drowned out by surrounding noise, but high-frequency vibrations cut through the soundscape with surprising efficiency. Males often position themselves near rushing streams and send out bursts of ultrasound that travel cleanly through the turbulent air. Females, equipped with finely tuned hearing organs, detect these messages and follow them through thick vegetation. The ability to use such extreme frequencies demonstrates remarkable evolutionary adaptation to challenging habitats. While these calls remain silent to human ears, they form rich conversations that shape courtship, territory, and survival, revealing a hidden layer of communication humming just beyond the limits of our perception. Humans shift their voice tone depending on social context. Throughout the day, people subtly adjust their tone, pitch, and rhythm, depending on whom they are speaking to. Without conscious thought, voices soften around those requiring comfort, brighten when addressing children, and become more measured in formal situations. These shifts reflect long-learned patterns that help signal intention, emotion, and social alignment. In group settings, people often match their tone to the general mood, syncing pitch and pacing with others to build rapport. During conflict, voices may tighten and shorten, while cooperation brings smoother, more melodic speech. Even posture and breathing influence these changes, creating a full-body method of aligning communication with social dynamics. This adaptive flexibility allows humans to navigate complex relationships, form alliances, maintain harmony, and express nuanced feelings through sound alone. The human voice becomes an instrument that reshapes itself continuously, guided by cultural norms, emotional states, and interpersonal expectations. Some cultures use musical pitch instead of fixed words. In certain rare traditions, communication unfolds through melodies rather than discrete vocabulary. Instead of relying on a stable set of spoken words, speakers shape meaning through rising and falling tones that follow established musical contours. Each pattern conveys a unique message, much like a musical phrase signaling a concept. These systems flourish in environments where sound travels long distances or where spoken noise would be disruptive. Hunters might use melodic signals to coordinate movement without startling animals. Farmers might communicate across open fields using high, clear notes that carry far across the landscape. Children learn these musical expressions alongside everyday speech, gaining parallel abilities to express ideas through song-like sequences. Listeners track subtle differences in pitch, duration, and repetition, building a rich auditory vocabulary that exists outside the structure of typical language. Communication becomes a blend of music and meaning, revealing the creative range of human expression. Elephants recognize the voices of many individuals over great distances. Across savannas and forests, elephant families stay connected through low, rumbling calls that travel farther than most sounds produced by land animals. These calls move through air and ground in patterns that can reach other groups many kilometers away. Within these resonant signals are subtle variations that elephants learn to identify. A matriarch can recognize a distant sister, a cousin, or a long-time companion simply from the texture of the rumble. Young elephants grow up listening to hundreds of unique voices, learning not only who is speaking, but what emotional state they are in. This recognition supports cooperation between family units, helps mothers and calves reunite, and allows groups to coordinate movement across wide territories. These long-distance conversations flow through landscapes like invisible threads, binding elephant communities together even when they are far apart. Certain languages can only be learned fluently in early childhood. Some linguistic systems contain features so intricate that full mastery requires exposure during the earliest stages of development. These elements might include subtle tonal variations, extensive sound inventories, or complex grammatical structures that rely on extremely rapid distinctions. Adults who learn these languages later can communicate effectively, yet often struggle with the most delicate features that native speakers acquire naturally. This difference reveals how the human brain passes through sensitive periods when certain kinds of learning occur with ease. Children immersed in these languages absorb patterns without conscious effort, while adults must rely on deliberate practice. These systems offer insight into how environment and biology interact to shape linguistic ability. They highlight the remarkable capacity of young minds to map the world of sound and meaning with a precision that becomes harder to achieve as the brain matures. Sea lions can remember rhythmic patterns for many years. Among coastal colonies, individuals develop distinctive vocal rhythms that help them identify one another within crowded gatherings. These rhythms act almost like signatures woven into sound. Researchers have discovered that sea lions can recall these patterns even after long periods of separation. When a familiar rhythm is played, an animal may respond with heightened attention or produce its own matching vocalization, showing recognition even after years have passed. This long-term memory supports social bonds that extend beyond the breeding season, allowing mothers to locate older offspring or former partners to recognize each other during unpredictable encounters. In the noisy environment where waves crash and wind roars, rhythmic cues provide a reliable method of maintaining connection. Their ability to remember such patterns demonstrates sophisticated auditory processing that rivals some land mammals known for strong social intelligence. Humans communicate entire messages through eye movements alone. Before a single word is spoken, the eyes transmit information about interest, intention, and attention. A brief glance can invite someone closer. A sustained gaze can signal connection. A rapid shift in direction can warn of something approaching. In crowded settings, people often coordinate movements purely through silent eye exchanges, navigating shared spaces without collision. In more intimate contexts, subtle motions of the eyelids, brows, and pupils express emotional meaning that speech might complicate. These signals operate on fast timescales. The brain interprets them instantly, drawing on deeply ingrained social instincts. Even across cultures, many of these cues retain similar interpretations, suggesting an ancient origin. Eye-based communication becomes especially powerful when silence is needed, or when spoken language would be intrusive. The gaze becomes a channel of understanding, transmitting narrative, emotion, and intent without a single sound. Some insects use chemical scents as long-form narrative trails. Within the miniature worlds of forests and fields, certain insects create detailed stories using scent. They lay trails marking where food was found, how fresh it is, and which direction leads home. These chemical paths can branch, overlap, and shift over time, forming maps that guide entire colonies. Each droplet contains information about quality, urgency, or danger. When an insect encounters a trail, it reads these cues and adjusts its behavior accordingly. Some species update trails as conditions change, adding new layers of scent over older ones to reflect shifting circumstances. These trails can persist long enough to influence decisions hours or days later. In this way, chemical communication becomes a narrative that unfolds across the landscape, linking individuals through shared knowledge written not in sound, but in fragrant complexity. Songbirds compose improvised variations within their species' songs. In many forests, a songbird's voice is not a fixed performance, but a living practice shaped by learning, memory, and curiosity. A young male listens to adults throughout its first season, memorizing the basic structure that defines its species. Once it grows confident, it begins adding flourishes that are entirely its own. These variations may take the form of extended trills, unexpected pauses, or subtle bends in pitch that drift away from tradition before settling back into familiar patterns. Nearby rivals listen closely and reply with their own modifications, creating a kind of acoustic competition that unfolds without confrontation. Females often show preference for individuals who weave complexity into their songs, which drives further innovation across generations. As the months pass, the forest becomes filled with echoes of both inherited history and freshly invented riffs. This collaborative creativity transforms the morning air into a shifting mosaic of melody, where no two dawns ever sound exactly the same. Some languages contain sounds produced deep inside the throat. Across certain regions, speakers produce consonants that originate far below the area used for most familiar speech. These deep tones come from narrowing or vibrating structures near the upper throat, drawing on muscular control that many people from other language backgrounds rarely engage. To outsiders, these sounds can seem unusual, almost like internal resonances rather than speech. Yet to native speakers, they function with complete clarity, carrying meaning as precisely as any other consonant. Children acquire them early by watching adults and experimenting with subtle internal movements that gradually become refined and instinctive. These sounds often evolved in communities whose histories encouraged vocal distinction, identity marking, or careful control of airflow during long-spoken traditions. They highlight the remarkable adaptability of the human vocal tract and reveal that spoken language can extend far beyond the familiar terrain of tongue and lips. Within these linguistic worlds, the throat becomes an expressive instrument capable of shaping ideas through resonance that feels ancient and powerful. Bees detect emotional states through subtle vibrations in the hive. Inside a hive, thousands of bees move in tight quarters, creating a living structure that trembles with activity. These vibrations are not random background noise, but an intricate web of tactile information. Bees sense these tiny disturbances through specialized organs in their legs and bodies, giving them a sense of the colony's general mood. When foragers return with abundant nectar, their energetic movements ripple through the comb and inspire excited activity. If a predator disturbs the entrance, defensive bees generate sharper vibrations that travel through multiple layers of wax and alert the colony before the threat is even visible. Nurse bees produce gentle, calming tremors that help regulate the behavior of the queen and brood. Even temperature shifts alter the feel of the hive, adding another layer of meaning to the tactile environment. Through this constant flow of motion, bees maintain unity and coordination without spoken sound or central control. The hive acts as a resonant chamber where collective emotion spreads through vibration alone. Humans learn languages faster through story than through memorization. When a new language is woven into narrative, instead of presented as isolated forms, the human brain engages systems that link meaning with memory, emotion, and imagination. Characters, places, and events give purpose to unfamiliar words, turning each term into part of a larger picture rather than a disconnected item to recall. Stories offer repeated exposure without boredom, allowing the learner to meet the same structures in varied and natural contexts. This kind of repetition strengthens memory pathways far more effectively than lists or drills. The mind also forms emotional associations with narrative scenes, which makes retention deeper and more lasting. Even adults who struggle with traditional learning often find that tales, dialogues, and immersive scenarios allow them to absorb grammar without consciously studying it. In stories, language becomes something lived rather than something recited. The brain responds to this natural form of learning with enthusiasm, drawing new information into long-term memory almost effortlessly. Certain primates develop regional accents. Across stretches of tropical forest, different groups of the same primate species can sound strikingly different even when using the same basic call types. These variations arise through social learning rather than genetics. Young individuals listen closely to the vocal habits of their immediate group and gradually shape their own calls to match. Over time, subtle differences in pitch, rhythm, or call length become stable regional identities. When members of one group encounter individuals from another region, they can immediately detect these distinctions, much as humans recognize unfamiliar accents. These patterns can influence cooperation, territory defense, and social trust, because familiar accents signal membership, while unfamiliar ones hinted outsider status. This phenomenon reveals that vocal learning is more widespread among animals than once believed. Through these evolving accents, primates create acoustic communities that mirror the social complexity of their daily lives. Cats use vocal frequencies that influence human attention. Domestic cats have spent many generations living alongside humans, and during that time, they have refined vocal strategies that tap directly into human perceptual tendencies. One of their most striking techniques is a call that blends a soft purring vibration with a higher-pitched cry. This combination creates a sound pattern that humans find difficult to ignore because it resembles the acoustic urgency of an infant seeking attention. Cats learn to use this call in moments when they want food, affection, or recognition. Caregivers often respond automatically without analyzing why the sound is so compelling. Over time, individual cats adjust their calls based on the reactions they receive, fine-tuning pitch and rhythm to create a personal communication style tailored to their household. This ability demonstrates impressive social awareness. Cats observe which sounds produce the strongest responses and shape their voices accordingly, turning everyday communication into a subtle and highly effective behavioral dialogue. Humans create entire communication systems using color and symbol alone. Throughout history, people have built visual languages that operate independently from spoken sound. These systems appear in weaving traditions, ceremonial patterns, maritime signal flags, sacred paintings, and coded alphabets. Each color or symbol carries a specific meaning, and meaning often changes depending on arrangement or repetition. Experts in these traditions can interpret complex information at a glance, understanding emotional tone, social hierarchy, or practical instruction without a single spoken word. Some systems evolved in settings where silence was essential, such as monasteries or hunting grounds. Others developed for long-distance signaling across water or open land. Symbol-based languages can also serve as repositories of cultural knowledge, preserving myths, rituals, and genealogies through patterns rather than speech. These visual systems highlight how flexible human communication can be. When sound is unavailable or impractical, people turn to shape, shade, and placement to convey the full richness of human meaning. Whales share cultural dialects passed from pod to pod. Across the oceans, whale communities maintain distinct repertoires of clicks, whistles, and patterned pulses that function as vocal traditions. These dialects are not inherited from parents in a biological sense. Instead, they are learned through social exposure. Young whales grow up listening to group members and gradually shape their own calls to match the pattern of their pod. Over the years, subtle changes occur as individuals introduce small innovations. If these variations prove appealing or useful, they are adopted by others, and the dialect slowly evolves. When pods with different traditions meet, they may exchange elements of their vocal culture, creating blended patterns that travel through migratory routes. These dialects help whales maintain group identity, coordinate movement, and recognize distant companions. The ocean becomes filled with acoustic cultures that drift and transform across generations, carried from one family to the next through learning and memory. Spiders communicate courtship intent through web vibrations. A spider's web is an intricate structure tuned to the slightest movement. When a potential mate approaches, he pucks the threads in a rhythmic pattern meant to identify himself and prevent the female from mistaking him for prey. These vibrations differ in frequency and spacing from those caused by insects or wind. The female reads these signals through her sensitive legs and responds by acknowledging his presence or rejecting him with defensive movements. Males often vary their rhythms as they draw nearer, adjusting tempo and intensity based on her reactions. In some species, the web even amplifies certain frequencies, allowing the message to carry farther. This silent dialogue unfolds through pure touch rather than vision or sound. Each strand becomes a conduit for intention, and courtship becomes a delicate performance choreographed across gossamer threads that function like musical strings. Some languages contain concepts that cannot be translated directly. Certain communities coin expressions that arise from their specific landscapes, traditions, or philosophies, and these ideas resist simple explanation in other languages. The concept may unite emotion, memory, social duty, and environment in a single term that holds deep meaning for those who speak it. Attempted translations often require entire paragraphs to convey what the original expresses effortlessly. These untranslatable ideas highlight how languages encode unique ways of understanding the world. They reflect local histories, values, and shared experiences that cannot be lifted out of context without losing their essence. When learners encounter such concepts, they gain insight into perspectives that differ from their own, revealing hidden dimensions of human thought. These special words remind us that language is not merely a tool for communication, but a lens that shapes how communities perceive reality. Horses use a combination of ear position and breath to convey emotion. In a herd, communication flows constantly, even when no sound is spoken. Horses use their entire bodies to express mood, intention, and sensitivity, but their ears and breath form two of their most precise instruments. The angle of each ear reveals focus and emotional charge. A forward tilt can signal curiosity. A gentle sideways turn may show relaxation. A backward swivel can indicate annoyance or discomfort. At the same time, their breath carries information that experienced horses read instantly. A deep, slow exhale can calm a nervous companion. A sharp puff can warn of uncertainty. A quick repeated snort may alert the herd to something unusual in the environment. These signals work at distances where subtle facial cues cannot be seen, allowing horses to synchronize behavior across a pasture or trail. Humans who spend time with horses soon learn that these cues are constant and layered. Ear position and breath together form a language of emotion that guides social harmony, safety, and cooperation without the need for force or dominance. Some human languages are whistled to avoid detection in dense forests. In certain forest communities, people developed whistled versions of their spoken languages so they could communicate across long distances while remaining hidden from potential threats. These whistles mimic the melodies and rhythm of ordinary speech, but convert words into pure tone. The forest canopy becomes an acoustic corridor that carries whistles farther than spoken sound ever could. Hunters use these calls to coordinate movement without disturbing animals. Travelers use them to signal safe passage across shadowed paths. Because whistles blend naturally with birds and insects, outsiders often overlook them entirely. Children grow up learning both the spoken and whistled forms, switching effortlessly between them, depending on the situation. In a world where sound can reveal position, whistled language becomes a protective tool shaped by landscape, culture, and the need for quiet connection amid dense vegetation. Gorillas invent personal gestures that spread through their group. Gorillas communicate with a rich repertoire of movements, touches, and postures, yet within each community, individuals sometimes invent entirely new gestures. A young gorilla may create a playful tap, a unique chest pat, or a curious motion intended to attract attention. If the idea proves effective, others begin to mimic it. Over time, the gesture becomes part of the local culture. Different groups, living only a valley apart, can develop completely distinct sets of social signals based on these inventions. Researchers have observed gestures that appear in one family but never in another, even though both groups share the same species and environment. These creative movements show that guerrilla communication is not fixed. It grows through shared experience and imitation, forming cultural traditions that pass from one generation to the next without ever being spoken aloud. Some languages encode time by describing the landscape rather than the clock. In certain cultures, time is not divided into hours or minutes. Instead, events are anchored to the movement of the sun, the color of the sky, the behavior of animals, or the direction of shadows. A phrase may describe the moment when birds begin their morning calls or when the mountain peak first catches light. These expressions create a sense of time that is deeply connected to place. The language maps daily life onto the land, turning each moment into a relationship with the surrounding world. This approach reflects a worldview in which time flows with nature, rather than marching in fixed segments. It encourages attention to rhythm, season, and environment. Speakers learn to judge when something will happen by watching changes in wind or noticing shifts in clouds. Through this system, the landscape becomes a living calendar, and the language itself becomes rooted in the continual transformation of the world. Ants use entire chemical libraries to coordinate large-scale decisions. An ant colony operates like a living network held together by scent. Ants release complex blends of chemicals that guide everything from exploration to defense to construction. A single trail may contain dozens of compounds, each one altering how the message is interpreted. One scent invites workers to follow a path toward food. Another warns that predators lurk nearby. A third marks an area as unsuitable for further digging. These chemicals can combine in surprising ways, allowing ants to issue detailed instructions without spoken sound. When thousands of individuals add their own tiny contributions, the colony behaves as if it is thinking collectively. Trails strengthen or fade depending on usefulness. Decisions emerge from the combined chemical signatures rather than from a central leader. This system allows ants to adapt quickly to changing conditions, forming a flexible decision-making structure entirely through scent and shared movement. Humans can sense micro-pauses in speech that convey hidden meaning. In conversation, people often communicate more through timing than through words. Tiny pauses, often shorter than a breath, shape how listeners interpret intention and emotional weight. A pause that arrives just before an answer can signal hesitation, discomfort, or reconsideration. A pause that lingers after a statement can carry gravity or invite empathy. Even when the speaker is not consciously aware of these micro breaks, listeners detect them through finely tuned social instincts. These subtle gaps help reveal sincerity, uncertainty, humor, or quiet confidence. They guide turn-taking, soften tension, and create space for deeper understanding. The human mind tracks these minute adjustments automatically, drawing meaning from silence as much as from speech. The result is an invisible layer of communication that shapes every conversation, filling the spaces between words with messages that cannot be spoken outright. Dolphins use cooperative vocal strategies during hunts. When dolphins gather to pursue fish, their communication becomes a sophisticated acoustic choreography. Individuals emit calls that signal direction, speed, and intention. Some sounds encourage companions to close in on a school. Others alert the group to sudden shifts in the fish's movement. In certain formations, dolphins encircle prey and use coordinated bursts of sound to herd them into tight clusters. Each member adjusts vocal intensity and timing in response to others, creating a fluid system where information moves faster than the water around them. Younger dolphins learn these strategies by shadowing experienced hunters, gradually gaining the ability to interpret subtle cues that guide the entire operation. Cooperative hunting allows the group to capture more food than any individual could manage alone. Through this shared acoustic effort, dolphins reveal an impressive blend of intelligence, teamwork, and vocal precision. Some languages prioritize relationship over object when naming things. In certain linguistic traditions, the identity of a thing depends on the relationship between speaker, listener, and object. Instead of labeling an item by its material or function, the language describes how it relates to the person using the word. A word for a container may change depending on who owns it, who is giving it, or who is receiving it. Even directions can shift depending on the position of speaker and listener, rather than fixed coordinates. This system reflects a worldview in which connection is central. Objects are not isolated units, but part of a web of interactions. Children raised in these cultures learn to pay close attention to social context, because meaning shifts whenever relationships shift. This approach shows that language can prioritize bonds and perspective rather than absolute properties. It reminds us that communication can highlight community and connection as the foundation of thought. Birds use visual displays as complex as spoken language. Across grasslands, forests, and coastlines, countless bird species communicate with color, posture, and movement in ways that rival the complexity of spoken systems. A sudden lift of feathers can express dominance or invitation. A carefully timed wing flick may signal readiness to mate. Some species perform elaborate dances that combine steps, spins, and coordinated poses that convey identity and emotional state. Bright plumage patterns act as visual vocabularies, each combination carrying meaning shaped by season and circumstance. These displays are honed through generations of evolution and learned through careful observation. Young birds watch adults perform, then practice until their movements become fluid and precise. The result is a visual language that can express warning, attraction, reassurance, or challenge without a single sound. Certain cultures speak different languages depending on the season. In a few remarkable traditions, people switch languages when the environment changes. One language may be used during planting months, another during winter ceremonies, and another during migrations. Each carries its own stories, songs, and forms of etiquette. These seasonal languages preserve knowledge tied to specific parts of the year. They reflect cycles of agriculture, weather, and spiritual practice. Children grow up shifting between these systems as naturally as changing clothing for warmth or cooling. Each language holds a different relationship with nature, guiding behavior and marking transitions in the cycle of life. Through this practice, time becomes linguistic rather than numerical, and the passing seasons are honored not only through ritual, but through the very structure of speech. Gibbons sing in pairs to strengthen social bonds. High in the canopy where sunlight filters through layers of leaves, gibbons begin their morning with a duet that rises above the forest floor. These songs are not random vocal displays. They are carefully coordinated performances created by two partners who match pitch, rhythm, and phrasing with remarkable precision. Each partner contributes a distinct melodic line that intertwines with the other, creating a shared musical structure that announces unity to the entire landscape. Young gibbons listen closely to these duets as they grow, learning how each note reflects trust and cooperation. The pair repeats their song across many seasons, adjusting it slightly as their relationship deepens. Predators and rival pairs hear these voices and recognize that a territory is already occupied by a stable partnership. The duet becomes both declaration and reassurance, weaving emotional closeness into sound that travels far through the morning air. Through this gentle collaboration, Gibbons strengthened the bond that holds them together, using music as a living expression of commitment and connection. Some writing systems encode meaning without representing sound at all. Across human history, communities have developed written traditions that do not mirror the spoken voice. Instead of representing syllables or phonetic elements, these systems store meaning directly within the shapes of their characters. A single symbol can contain layers of cultural knowledge, social memory, or concrete information without referencing any particular pronunciation. Scholars who read these systems learn to interpret ideas visually in a way that feels more like reading images than hearing internal speech. Some of these writing traditions grew from ceremonial needs, where clarity of meaning mattered more than the rhythm of spoken language. Others emerged in environments where many spoken tongues coexisted, and a meaning-based script allowed communication across groups without requiring a shared oral vocabulary. In such systems, a reader encounters thought in its most distilled form. Instead of hearing words in the mind, the reader sees concepts unfold as interconnected pictures. This approach reveals the extraordinary flexibility of human communication and shows that writing can serve as a bridge between minds, even when speech does not. Elephants use rumbling notes that travel beneath the ground. Elephants produce low-frequency calls that move through earth as easily as through air. These rumbling signals travel far across dry soil, allowing family groups separated by great distances to maintain contact. Other elephants sense these vibrations through sensitive receptors in their feet and legs, reading direction and emotional content without needing to see the caller. A mother may communicate reassurance to a wandering calf. A matriarch may summon distant relatives toward a water source. During migration, these underground messages help coordinate movement among groups that may not be within the range of ordinary sound. The vibrations carry information about identity and mood because each individual creates a slightly different pattern. Young elephants learn to interpret these signals as part of their social education, standing still and placing their feet carefully to listen more clearly. Through this remarkable ability, elephants weave a communication network that extends across entire landscapes, linking families even when miles of savanna lie between them. Humans use scent as an unspoken form of social communication. Although modern life often distracts from the subtleties of scent, humans constantly interpret chemical cues without conscious awareness. Every person carries a natural scent signature shaped by biology, diet, health, and emotion. Others detect these cues in fleeting moments during daily interactions. Research suggests that humans respond to the scent of stress, sensing tension in someone nearby before a word is spoken. Familiar scents from loved ones can calm the nervous system and reduce anxiety. Infants recognize their caregivers by smell long before they fully understand language. Even in crowded places, people often choose seats or positions influenced by subtle olfactory comfort. The body releases tiny chemical traces during emotion, touch, and proximity. These cues travel through air and linger on fabric or skin, quietly guiding social behavior. Although humans rarely discuss this form of communication, scent remains a powerful and ancient channel through which trust, attraction, safety, and familiarity are conveyed. Some languages change structure depending on the speaker's emotion. In certain linguistic traditions, emotion shapes grammar in profound ways. When a speaker becomes excited, sorrowful, or affectionate, the language itself shifts in structure. Word order may change to highlight internal feeling. Special forms of verbs or particles appear only when the speaker wishes to reveal vulnerability or connection. In moments of anger or urgency, entire sets of grammatical markers come into play, allowing expression that is not simply louder or sharper, but structurally different. These systems reflect cultures that value the open sharing of emotional states. Children learn early that grammar can carry feeling just as clearly as tone or gesture. The result is a linguistic world in which emotion is not merely added to speech, but woven into the architecture of the sentence. Communication becomes a mirror of the inner self, shaped moment by moment through the shifting patterns of the heart. Dolphins can modify their signature calls when forming new alliances. Every dolphin develops a personal call that functions much like a name. Yet these identifying calls are not fixed. When dolphins form new partnerships or cooperative groups, they sometimes adjust the rhythm or pitch shape of their signature call to reflect closer connection. These changes are subtle but meaningful, allowing partners to recognize one another quickly, even in the dense world of underwater sound. Alliances among dolphins require trust, coordination, and shared intention, and modified calls help reinforce these bonds. Younger dolphins learn to identify altered signatures as signs of friendship or alliance, recognizing that such changes signify a shift in social relationships. The ability to adjust personal identity signals shows impressive social intelligence. It reveals that dolphins experience group formation not simply as shared activity, but as a deep realignment that deserves a corresponding shift in the way individuals present themselves through sound. Birds in crowded habitats adjust songs to prevent overlap. In dense colonies where hundreds of voices rise at once, many bird species adapt their songs to avoid acoustic interference. Individuals shift pitch to stand out from neighbors. Others change timing so their signals occupy quiet gaps in the surrounding chorus. These adjustments allow parents and chicks to find one another in the confusion. They also help individuals maintain territory boundaries in environments where many calls blend together. Over time, these crowded soundscapes shape the evolution of entire species, encouraging clearer tonal ranges and more distinctive phrasing. Young birds learn to navigate this complexity by listening to adults and practicing songs until they can be heard reliably above the ambient noise. Through careful timing and tonal adjustment, birds transform potential chaos into a coordinated tapestry of communication that fills the air with layered meaning. Some human languages contain no word for yesterday or tomorrow. In a few remarkable linguistic systems, time is not divided into past, present, and future in the way many cultures expect. Instead of marking events by their temporal distance, speakers describe them through relationships, context, or visible change. A memory may be framed in terms of who was involved rather than when it happened. A plan for the future may be described by its purpose rather than by its distance in time. The absence of specific words for yesterday or tomorrow encourages a worldview rooted in present experience and ongoing process. Speakers learn to navigate time through cycles, environment, and intention, rather than through linear measurement. This perspective reshapes thought, guiding individuals to focus less on sequencing and more on interconnectedness. Through such languages, time becomes a fluid understanding woven into daily life, rather than a rigid framework imposed on events. Primates use touch as a nuanced and strategic communication tool. Among many primate species, touch conveys information more precisely than sound. A gentle groom along the arm can soothe tension within a group. A brief hand on the back can signal reassurance or submission. Mothers use soft strokes to regulate the emotions of their young, teaching them the social meaning of touch long before they master vocal calls. Dominant individuals may use light physical contact to maintain order without confrontation, while close companions share frequent grooming to reinforce trust. These interactions form a tactile language in which pressure, duration, and location each carry meaning. Through touch, primates negotiate alliances, solve conflicts, and maintain group cohesion. Even silent exchanges can communicate entire emotional stories. Touch becomes an essential thread weaving their social fabric, influencing behavior more profoundly than vocal communication alone. Certain languages are designed to be spoken only in sacred rituals. Across some cultures, there exist languages reserved exclusively for ceremonial use. These sacred forms of speech carry histories, myths, and spiritual significance that are not spoken casually. The vocabulary may be ancient, preserved across generations by priests, elders, or ritual specialists. The structure can differ dramatically from everyday language, using patterns believed to honor ancestors, invoke blessings, or connect participants with the divine. Because these languages appear only during specific times of year or at significant communal events, their sound becomes linked with reverence and transformation. Children grow up hearing these sacred words with awe, recognizing them as keys to cultural identity. When spoken, the ritual language shifts the atmosphere, guiding participants into a different state of mind. Through these carefully preserved linguistic traditions, communities maintain connection to their spiritual heritage and affirm beliefs that shape their understanding of the world. Wolves use scent marks as detailed territorial messages. Across wide forests and plains, wolves create invisible maps using the chemistry of their bodies. A scent mark is not a simple boundary line. It is a layered message containing information about identity, health, breeding status, and the strength of the pack. When a wolf places a mark on a tree or stone, subtle chemical components reveal whether it is a dominant individual or a younger member still finding its place. Other wolves, reading the scent, can sense how recently the mark was made and how many individuals contributed to it. These chemical notes linger in the air and soil, guiding decisions about movement and territory without confrontation. Young wolves learn the meaning of each scent by following older pack members, observing how they respond to different signals. Through this scent-based language, wolves maintain peace across enormous landscapes, avoiding dangerous conflicts by respecting messages carried not in sound, but in the quiet presence of their own biological bra. Signature. Humans use facial micro-movements as a parallel language. Every conversation between humans contains a second stream of meaning that flows through the tiny muscles of the face. These micro-movements flash across the skin in moments too brief for conscious control. A fleeting tightening of the eyelids can reveal tension. A nearly invisible lift of one eyebrow can signal uncertainty. A softening around the mouth can express relief or affection. People read these movements instantly, even when they are unaware of doing so. This parallel language shapes impressions and influences trust, guiding listeners toward deeper understanding of intention and emotion. Infants learn to read facial microsignals long before they fully comprehend speech, responding to the smallest cues of comfort or displeasure. This silent communication remains active throughout life, adding layers of nuance that cannot be expressed through words alone. It is an ancient channel of expression that threads through every human interaction, revealing truth even in moments when speech remains calm and controlled. Some birds use tools to produce rhythmic communication. In certain regions, birds create complex displays by using objects in their environment as instruments. A bird may tap a hollow branch with a precise beat, creating a resonant pattern that carries through the forest. Another might pick up a stone and strike it against a hard surface to announce presence or attract a mate. These rhythms vary by species and individual personality, forming distinctive acoustic signatures that neighbors learn to recognize. Some birds even experiment with different objects until they find one that produces the ideal tone. Young birds watch adults perform these percussive displays and practice until they can match the steady rhythm. These tool-based performances reveal a level of creativity and problem-solving that transforms simple objects into communicative symbols. Through rhythm rather than melody, these birds weave messages of territory, identity, and courtship into the natural soundscape. Frogs create sound patterns only detectable to their own species. In wetlands and rain-soaked forests, frogs fill the night with sound. Yet many of these calls are designed for specific ears. Some species produce patterns that fall within narrow frequency ranges, detectable only by others of their kind. These specialized calls prevent confusion in environments where hundreds of voices compete for attention. Males use these selective frequencies to reach nearby females without alerting predators or rival species. The structure of each pattern reflects local conditions, with calls adapted to carry through dense vegetation, over still water, or across rocky surfaces. Young frogs grow up surrounded by this chorus and gradually learn which patterns belong to their species. By tuning their calls to a private channel within the surrounding noise, frogs create a hidden layer of communication that reveals a world of nuance beneath the louder sounds of the night. Humans can recognize familiar voices after hearing only a few syllables. The human brain carries an extraordinary capacity for vocal memory. When someone hears even a brief fragment of a familiar voice, recognition often emerges instantly. The mind does not rely solely on pitch. It reads subtle clues in pacing, breath flow, resonance, and articulation. These acoustic signatures are stored through years of shared experience, becoming as recognizable as a face or scent. Even in noisy environments, familiar voices cut through background sound with ease, activating memories and emotional associations. Infants demonstrate this ability early by responding immediately to the voices of caregivers. Adults rely on it during conversation, allowing them to identify friends or family members even when distance or distortion obscures the words themselves. This rapid recognition highlights the profound role voices play in social connection and personal identity. Some languages use no verb tenses at all. In certain cultures, time is expressed without modifications to the verb. Instead of shifting form to indicate past, present, or future, speakers rely on context, adverbs, or shared understanding to show when an event takes place. The verb remains constant, acting as a neutral anchor around which meaning flows. This structure encourages listeners to focus on relationships, intention, and circumstance, rather than strict chronological order. Speakers describe events as part of broader patterns rather than isolated points in time. Such systems create a worldview in which time is understood through experience and environment rather than linear progression. Children learn to navigate this fluidity with ease, drawing on clues within the surrounding conversation. These languages reveal that grammar need not follow the patterns familiar to most of the world. Time can be expressed through many different conceptual pathways, each shaped by cultural history and shared tradition. Elephants communicate fertility cycles through low-frequency sounds. Female elephants produce subtle vocal signals that reveal changes in their reproductive cycles. These low-frequency calls travel long distances and allow males to detect when a female is ready to mate, even when she is beyond direct sight. The signals carry information about hormonal state, physical readiness, and emotional calm. Males respond with increased interest or by approaching slowly to investigate further. These fertility-related calls help reduce conflict, as males can determine which females are receptive without aggressive competition. Young elephants observe these interactions as part of their social education, learning how sound, movement, and scent intertwine in courtship behavior. The ability to communicate reproductive timing supports genetic diversity and maintains harmony within herds that often roam across enormous ranges. Some insects use wing vibrations as complex courtship dialogues. In fields and forests, many insects engage in elaborate wing-based communication during mating rituals. They do not rely solely on color or scent. Instead, they produce intricate vibrations that pass through air or plant stems. Each pattern carries meaning. Some signals announce presence. Others express readiness. Still others guide potential partners into synchronized movement. These vibrations require precise control of muscle speed and wing angle. A successful insect must produce consistent rhythms that match the expectations of its species. Females often evaluate males based on the quality of these vibrations, choosing partners whose signals demonstrate strength, health, and coordination. Young insects emerge with instinctive templates for these patterns but refine them through experience. This blend of biology and learning creates a courtship system filled with subtlety and expressive depth. Humans sense emotional tension in speech through breath patterns. Every spoken phrase carries a hidden layer of meaning shaped by the breath behind it. The cadence of inhalation and exhalation reveals stress, calm, hesitation, or excitement. When someone speaks while holding tension in the chest, listeners detect the tightness even before the words reach full clarity. Conversely, speech supported by slow, steady breath can communicate confidence and reassurance. These patterns influence social interaction in ways that often bypass conscious awareness. People adjust their own breathing in response, aligning rhythms during moments of empathy or diverging during conflict. Infants learn to read these cues early, responding strongly to breathe-based shifts in a caregiver's voice. Breath becomes an invisible thread, linking emotion to sound, guiding human intuition in every conversation. Dolphins coordinate group behavior through rapid burst pulses. When dolphins travel or hunt together, they produce fast sequences of pulses that function as real-time instructions. These bursts of sound carry information about direction, speed, and group alignment. Within a split moment, each dolphin understands where companions are moving and adjusts accordingly. These pulses create a dynamic map in the water, helping the group avoid obstacles, encircle prey, or reorganize during sudden changes in the environment. Young dolphins learn the meaning of these signals by swimming alongside experienced adults and gradually interpreting the patterns. The ability to coordinate through such rapid communication allows dolphin groups to behave with remarkable unity, responding to challenges with precision and fluidity that rivals the most practiced human banners. Teams. Some languages use body orientation as a required part of grammar. In certain communities, the position of the speaker's body in physical space is not optional expression, but a core piece of grammar. A person cannot simply speak while facing any direction. The orientation itself carries meaning that shapes the sentence. Turning slightly toward the listener may indicate shared knowledge. Facing a landmark may signal that the information concerns that place. Rotating the torso or shifting stance can distinguish between events witnessed personally and events learned through others. Children raised in these cultures grow up learning that language is woven into the body and that meaning flows through posture as much as through words. The listener pays close attention to the angle of the speaker's shoulders, the direction of the gaze, and the alignment of the feet. These cues are not decoration. They are required elements that guide understanding in the same way verb forms or case markers do in other languages. This approach creates a communication system in which thought, body, and environment merge into one expressive field. It reveals a worldview in which humans are inseparable from the space they inhabit, and where language does not float above the physical world, but lives within it. Crickets use temperature-dependent rhythms for communication. The songs of crickets are not fixed. Instead, they shift with changes in temperature, creating a flexible acoustic system that reflects the environment. As air grows warmer, the muscles controlling their wings move more quickly, producing faster rhythms. In cooler air, the tempo slows, turning each call into a softer, measured pulse. These variations do not diminish communication. Rather, They allow individuals to match their signals to conditions that neighbors also experience. A cricket, listening in the same temperature range, can accurately interpret pace, tone, and intention even as the rhythm changes. This temperature sensitivity helps the population remain synchronized during important moments such as territory contests or mate attraction. Young crickets gradually learn how these patterns shift by observing the sounds of adults across seasons. The result is a communication system tuned directly to climate, revealing how even small creatures integrate environmental cues into their social interactions. Humans establish social hierarchy through subtle shifts in speech rhythm. Every conversation contains tiny adjustments in pacing that reveal unspoken social dynamics. A speaker who wishes to project authority often slows the ends of phrases or holds brief pauses that signal confidence. Someone who feels uncertain may speak quickly, with rising rhythm that invites confirmation. In group settings, individuals match or resist the rhythms of others, forming layers of dominance, deference, or alliance. These shifts occur without conscious planning. They arise from long-learned instincts that govern how people navigate social space. When a new leader enters a room, the collective rhythm often changes as others adapt their timing to accommodate that presence. Children learn these patterns by listening to adults, incorporating them into their own communication long before they understand abstract ideas about hierarchy. Through rhythm alone, humans negotiate roles, resolve friction, and maintain social order. Birds in large colonies use individual calls like personal names. In vast colonies where thousands of birds gather, chaos would reign without a system of recognition. Many species solve this by developing individualized calls that function almost like personal names. A chick can identify its parent among a sea of voices. Adults returning from the sea can locate their mate even when surrounded by countless others producing similar sounds. These distinctive call patterns arise through slight differences in pitch, rhythm, and sequence. Each bird learns the voices of its closest companions, forming a memory bank of acoustic identities. As the colony grows, these unique signatures become essential for maintaining family bonds. Young chicks learn their parents' voices within days and respond with eager chirps when they hear the familiar pattern. This vocal individuality allows birds to build stable social networks in crowded environments where visual recognition would be nearly impossible. Certain languages are spoken only in whispered form to maintain secrecy. Some cultural groups preserve special forms of speech meant to be heard only within their own circles. These languages are spoken entirely in soft, breathy tones, preventing outsiders from understanding or even detecting that communication is taking place. Whispered languages may be used during rituals, conflict avoidance, or times when discretion is required for survival. The grammar remains intact, but the sound is shaped into a gentle airflow that carries meaning quietly through the air. Children learn the whispered form alongside everyday speech, understanding that it is reserved for specific contexts. Because whispered sound carries poorly across distance, it creates natural privacy, even in shared spaces. Listeners must stand close, reinforcing a sense of unity among those permitted to participate. This linguistic tradition transforms whispering from a simple vocal technique into a powerful cultural tool that preserves memory, identity, and shared secrecy. Whales use sound maps of their migration paths. Across the oceans, whales navigate through sound. They send deep calls that bounce through the water and return with echoes shaped by seafloor contours, temperature layers, and distant shorelines. Over a lifetime, a whale learns how these echoes differ along its migratory route. The result is a mental sound map that guides travel with extraordinary accuracy. Young whales follow elders who vocalize during movement, allowing the next generation to absorb these acoustic landscapes. Each journey strengthens memory and adds new layers of understanding. Even when visibility is limited by darkness or plankton-rich water, whales move with confidence because their world is defined through returning waves of sound. These acoustic maps become lifelong companions, linking whales to ancestral paths and helping them navigate thousands of miles with effortless precision. Humans communicate stress through tiny changes in pitch. Human voices shift in response to emotion long before words reveal anything. Under stress, the vocal cords tighten slightly, creating a rise in pitch that listeners detect instantly. This change may be small, but it carries powerful meaning. Even strangers can sense tension through this subtle lift. During conversation, people unconsciously adjust their own pitch when responding to someone who is stressed, either matching it in empathy or lowering their tone to offer calm. This instinctive sensitivity appears early in life, with infants reacting strongly to stressed voices even before understanding language. Over time, adults learn to refine their perception, distinguishing between excitement, fear, irritation, or pressure based on minute pitch variations. These vocal cues act as early warnings, allowing social groups to respond to emotional states before conflict or confusion arises. Some languages use breathiness as a meaningful sound type. In a few linguistic traditions, breathy voice is not simply an emotional effect. It is a distinct sound category that changes the meaning of words. Speakers shape the vocal cords so that air flows softly around them, creating a gentle, airy quality that contrasts with ordinary speech. This breathy sound can distinguish nouns from verbs, mark social politeness, or signal a speaker's attitude toward the listener. The difference is subtle, but important. Listeners trained in the language hear it instantly, while outsiders may fail to notice anything unusual. Children learn to produce breathiness through careful imitation of adults, practicing until they can control airflow with precision. The existence of this sound type shows how diverse human phonetic systems can be and how small variations in airflow can carry complex meaning. Fish communicate with popping sounds made inside their bodies. Below the water's surface, many fish create sounds that humans rarely hear without special equipment. These sounds come from internal organs or rapid muscle movements rather than vocal cords. A fish may contract muscles around its swim bladder, producing a sharp pop that carries through water. These signals help individuals coordinate movement, claim territory, or attract mates. Each species produces its own distinctive pattern, forming an underwater soundscape that reveals social activity even in murky conditions. Young fish learn to recognize these patterns as part of their survival strategy, responding quickly to warning pops or courtship sequences. The ability to create sound internally demonstrates how life in water has shaped communication in unique ways, turning the body into a natural instrument. Humans adapt their vocabulary automatically to match their listener. During conversation, humans instinctively adjust their choice of words to reflect the background, age, experience, and familiarity of the person they are speaking to. This adaptation happens without conscious planning. When speaking to a child, adults naturally simplify vocabulary and increase warmth. When speaking to an expert, they introduce specialized terms. When speaking to someone from a different region, they may shift toward more neutral phrasing. This process reflects remarkable social awareness. The brain continuously evaluates cues such as facial expression, posture, and tone, selecting language that fits the moment. This adaptive ability strengthens connection, reduces misunderstanding, and helps communication flow smoothly. It is one of the most flexible aspects of human interaction and reveals how deeply language is tied to empathy and social intuition. Some monkeys teach their young specific call patterns. Among certain monkey species, vocal learning is not left to chance. Older individuals intentionally guide the young through the complex structure of their group's communication system. A mother may repeat a particular call in a calm environment, allowing her infant to hear the full shape of the sound without distraction. As the youngster grows, elders introduce new calls that match social needs, such as warning signals, food announcements, or gentle reassurance used during grooming. Sometimes adults interrupt a young monkey's attempt and repeat the correct pattern, encouraging refinement through practice. This structured teaching helps the young develop precise timing, volume control, and emotional context, ensuring that calls serve the group effectively. Over time, the juvenile becomes fluent in the vocal traditions of its community, learning which sounds require urgency and which require subtlety. This process reveals that communication in monkeys is not merely instinctive. It is a guided education shaped by experience, patience, and social intention. Birds use duets to signal territory boundaries. In many species, a mated pair sings in tightly timed coordination to declare ownership of a territory. These duets are remarkable displays of precision. One partner begins a phrase and the other joins seamlessly, weaving a layered pattern that carries across forests, savannas, or open wetlands. Rival pairs hear these coordinated songs and recognize the strength of the bond behind them. A stable partnership signals resilience, making encroachment less likely. Beyond territorial defense, these duets help maintain unity within the pair. The birds adjust to each other's timing, responding instantly to shifts in pitch or rhythm. Over many seasons, the duet evolves into a deeply personal signature that reflects shared history. Young birds observe these synchronized performances, learning how commitment and cooperation shape their species' communication. Through this musical collaboration, birds turn sound into a living boundary and a testament to partnership. Humans communicate shared understanding through silence. Silence is often treated as the absence of communication, yet in human interaction, it can carry meaning as clearly as spoken words. When two people share mutual understanding, a quiet moment can convey agreement more effectively than any phrase. In conversation, silence can mark respect, reflection, or connection. Friends who know each other well can sit without speaking and still share emotional presence. During storytelling, a pause allows the listener to absorb the weight of a moment. In conflict, silence signals caution or unresolved tension. Cultural traditions shape these meanings, teaching individuals when silence shows courtesy and when it shows dissent. Listeners learn to read subtle cues such as breath, posture, and eye movement to interpret what the silence contains. Through these quiet spaces, humans share thoughts that do not require articulation, revealing that communication extends far beyond words. Some languages have no plural forms for objects. In certain linguistic systems, objects are not marked as singular or multiple. Instead, the language expresses quantity through context, additional words, or shared understanding. A term for an object remains unchanged, whether it refers to one item or many. This approach reflects a worldview in which number is not the primary category for describing reality. Speakers focus instead on shape, usefulness, or relationship. For instance, a speaker might describe the presence of objects using phrases that specify abundance, scarcity, or arrangement, rather than a strict count. Children learn early to interpret these cues effortlessly, observing how adults gesture or emphasize particular details to clarify meaning. The absence of plural forms encourages flexible thought and demonstrates that counting is only one of many possible ways to structure language. Through this system, communication becomes centered on experience and connection, rather than numerical distinction. Spiders use courtship vibrations that differ between individuals. When a male spider approaches a female's web, He produces a unique pattern of vibrations that announces his identity. These vibrations vary from one individual to the next, creating personal signatures that the female recognizes and evaluates. The rhythm, strength, and sequence of the vibrations reveal information about the male's size, health, and coordination. Females respond differently to each pattern, showing preference for signals that demonstrate stability and precision. Because WEDs amplify certain frequencies, these courtship vibrations travel clearly along the strands, allowing communication without visual contact. Young males practice these patterns while growing, refining their technique as they become mature. The result is a courtship ritual shaped by individuality rather than uniform species-wide signals. Through these subtle vibrations, spiders express personal qualities and negotiate attraction with remarkable sensitivity. Humans can perceive a speaker's age through subtle vocal cues. The human voice changes gradually across a lifetime, and listeners are astonishingly skilled at identifying age through faint acoustic details. Children produce speech with lighter resonance and quicker transitions between sounds. Adults develop richer tones shaped by experience and physical maturity. Older individuals often show gentle shifts in breath control or vocal firmness. These differences are small enough that the speaker may not notice them, yet listeners detect them instantly. This perception is not simply based on pitch. It comes from patterns of articulation, timing, and rhythm that accumulate with time. People across many cultures share this skill, demonstrating that the ear is finely tuned to the life story carried within a voice. Even after hearing only a brief fragment of speech, listeners often estimate age with surprising accuracy. This ability helps guide social interaction, allowing individuals to adapt behavior, tone, or formality based on vocal impression alone. Certain languages mark every statement with a social relationship indicator. In some linguistic traditions, every sentence must include a marker that describes the relationship between the speaker and the listener. These indicators reflect respect, familiarity, status, or emotional closeness. A simple statement about weather or food cannot be spoken without acknowledging this relational context. Speakers choose forms that match the situation exactly. Using a marker that is too formal or too intimate can create tension, while the correct choice signals harmony. Children spend years mastering the subtle distinctions that guide these markers, learning from the expressions of elders and the reactions of peers. This approach transforms language into a constant reminder of social awareness. It teaches that communication is not only about conveying facts, but also about honoring the bonds between people. Dolphins use echo patterns to describe objects in their environment. When dolphins emit clicks into the water, they listen to the returning echoes with extraordinary sensitivity. These echoes reflect shape, texture, density, and movement of objects nearby. A dolphin can distinguish between smooth surfaces and rough ones, between hollow objects and solid ones, and even between different species of fish. They share this information with companions through subtle adjustments in the pattern of their own clicks. The rhythm and spacing of these signals pass descriptive details across the group, allowing dolphins to coordinate behavior or warn others of obstacles. Young dolphins learn this skill through long periods of play and exploration, practicing echo interpretation until it becomes instinctive. Through this acoustic intelligence, dolphins create a shared sensory world, built entirely from sound. Humans create entire worlds through fictional languages. Human imagination extends far beyond daily life. In stories, games, and creative projects, people build entirely new languages complete with grammar, sound systems, and cultural background. These constructed languages emerge from curiosity and the desire to shape new realities. Some are designed for elegance, others for alien mystery, and others for emotional depth. Creators craft rules that guide pronunciation, word formation, and social expression, ensuring internal consistency. As these languages grow, they become frameworks that support fictional histories, rituals, and identities. Communities of enthusiasts often learn these languages, using them for songs, dialogue, or artistic expression. This ability shows that humans are not only speakers of inherited tongues, but also architects of linguistic invention. Through such creativity, people reveal the limitless potential of language to build entire worlds. Some languages are designed to be spoken very rapidly. Certain speech traditions favor speed not as a stylistic choice, but as a core requirement. These languages use compact syllables, predictable patterns, and minimal pauses that allow ideas to flow quickly without losing clarity. In communities where rapid communication is valued, listeners develop skill at processing meaning in swift bursts, understanding nuances even when phrases move at remarkable pace. Children raised in these environments learn to speak rapidly through imitation, mastering breath control and rhythm early in life. The structure of these languages supports the speed, relying on consistent patterns that the ear recognizes instantly. This approach demonstrates that language can be shaped to match cultural rhythms, turning fast speech into a precise and expressive art form rather than hurried conversation. Bats use complex group vocalization to maintain social order. Inside dark roosts where thousands of wings fold together, bats maintain harmony through a network of shared sound. These animals do not rely on vision to organize themselves. Instead, they use layered combinations of chirps, trills, and low murmurs that guide movement, establish spacing, and maintain peace within the cluster. Each vocalization carries subtle meaning shaped by rhythm and pitch. A gentle fluttering sound may request room to settle. A deeper call may signal that an individual is protecting its resting place. Mothers use soft vocal strokes to locate their pups among enormous numbers of nearly identical young. As night falls and the colony prepares to fly, group vocalization becomes more lively, helping individuals coordinate exits so that wings do not collide in tight space. Young bats learn the social rules of these sounds by listening closely to adults, gradually mastering when to speak, when to remain quiet, and how to respond to the community's shifting acoustic patterns. Through this complex vocal guidance, bats transform crowded roosts into well-ordered societies where sound shapes every moment of collective life. Humans communicate future intent through gesture alone. Long before words emerge in a conversation, the body begins sending its own messages. A person may lean slightly forward to show readiness. A lifted hand may indicate the wish to contribute. A shift of weight toward a doorway may reveal the desire to leave. These gestures often appear before the mind has fully formed the intention, allowing others to anticipate action without conscious thought. In group settings, people synchronize with these physical cues, adjusting their behavior in response. This sensitivity appears early in life. Infants watch their caregivers' hands and arms, learning to predict what will happen next. As children grow, they refine this awareness, using subtle gestures to negotiate play, cooperation, and shared plans. Even in adulthood, gesture remains a powerful tool for expressing future intent, guiding interaction long before language is spoken. This physical communication forms a quiet layer beneath conversation, helping humans move together smoothly in daily life. Some languages have separate vocabularies for day and night. In a few extraordinary linguistic traditions, the world changes so completely between daylight and darkness that speakers use separate sets of words depending on the time. These vocabularies reflect different concerns, activities, and perceptions tied to each period. Day speech may include terms for work, movement across the landscape, and social gathering. Night speech may focus on stories, rituals, or tasks requiring caution. The shift between vocabularies marks the passage of time in a way that is felt rather than counted. Children learn early that certain words belong to sunlight and others to moonlit hours. The transition is not merely practical. It carries emotional meaning, drawing a boundary between two modes of existence. When people speak in night vocabulary, the atmosphere changes and the community enters a different state of mind. Through this division, language shapes the rhythm of the day and deepens awareness of the natural world. Elephants use collective calling to make group decisions. When a herd must choose a direction, elephants engage in a remarkable form of democratic communication. Individuals produce soft rumbles that pass through air and ground, each call expressing preference or readiness. Older matriarchs often initiate these exchanges, but every adult can contribute. The herd listens to the pattern that emerges. When enough voices align, the group begins to move in the chosen direction. These collective calls help avoid conflict and maintain unity during long journeys. Young elephants observe this process closely, learning how the community makes decisions through shared sound rather than dominance. The result is a social structure built on cooperation and mutual awareness. Through these resonant calls, elephants demonstrate wisdom, patience, and group-mindedness that guide them across the landscape with remarkable cohesion. Humans can detect sarcasm through rhythm alone. Sarcasm does not require exaggerated facial expression or explicit wording. Humans can perceive it instantly through subtle shifts in rhythm. When someone speaks sarcastically, their pacing often falls into an unusual pattern. A phrase may begin with deliberate slowness and end with a light upward movement. Or it may carry a mismatched emphasis that listeners recognize as incongruent with the literal meaning. Even when the words appear sincere, the rhythm carries a different message. This sensitivity is universal across cultures, appearing early in childhood as children begin to understand tone. Adults use this rhythmic signal to navigate humor, disagreement, and social play. Through rhythm alone, sarcasm allows people to express sharp ideas without direct confrontation, adding a nuanced layer to human communication that relies on auditory instinct rather than explicit language. Certain languages encode entire myths into single ritual words. Some linguistic traditions contain special ritual terms that hold entire stories within a single utterance. These words carry layers of meaning that unfold only when spoken in the correct ceremonial context. A ritual word may reference the creation of the world, the deeds of ancestral beings, or the moral foundations of the community. When spoken, it does not simply name these stories. It invokes them, summoning emotions, teachings, and collective memory. Elders guard the knowledge behind these words, teaching the full depth of meaning only to those who have earned trust. Children hear these words long before they learn their hidden significance, sensing the reverence they command. When fully understood, a ritual word becomes a condensed universe of myth, tradition, and identity. Through this method, language becomes a vessel for cultural heritage, carrying entire histories across generations with breathtaking economy. Whales use long-range calls that form ocean-wide networks. Whales communicate across distances so vast that one call may travel from one end of an ocean basin to another. These low-frequency sounds move through water with minimal loss, creating a kind of acoustic highway connecting distant groups. A whale in one region may respond to calls from hundreds of miles away, adjusting its movement or vocal behavior in response. Over time, these long-range calls form loose networks that link populations across seasonal migrations. Young whales learn these calls by listening to elders, gradually understanding how they guide orientation and social awareness. The ocean becomes a resonant chamber filled with voices that drift across time and space. Through these expansive conversations, whales maintain relationships, share information, and sense the presence of companions far beyond the horizon. Humans communicate trust through specific vocal warmth. When people speak with genuine trust or affection, their voices shift in subtle but unmistakable ways. The tone becomes softer, the pitch steadier, and the breath behind each word more relaxed. These changes create a warmth that listeners perceive instinctively. Even strangers can sense when someone speaks with sincerity. This vocal warmth influences social bonding and helps individuals feel safe in conversation. Children grow especially attuned to these cues, responding with calm attention when they hear voices that carry emotional openness. Adults use this warmth to soothe conflict, deepen friendship, or express gratitude. Through these gentle acoustic qualities, humans communicate trust without needing to describe it directly. The voice itself becomes the message. Some species create new signals when old ones become ineffective. In dynamic environments where predators adapt or habitats change, certain species invent new communication signals to maintain survival. When an existing call no longer provides advantage, a group may begin using altered versions that better suit the new conditions. These innovations can spread rapidly through social learning. One individual experiments with a new sound or gesture, and others imitate it if it proves effective. Over time, the new signal becomes standard, replacing the outdated form. This adaptability reveals how communication is shaped by ongoing challenges. It also demonstrates that many animals possess creative flexibility, adjusting their systems of meaning as their world shifts. Humans use language to reshape memory each time a story is told. When people retell a memory, they do not simply retrieve it, they rebuild it. The act of describing an event alters the way the mind stores it, emphasizing certain details and softening others. With each telling, the memory becomes intertwined with interpretation, emotion, and audience reaction. Language serves as the tool that guides this transformation. A person may add clarity, remove confusion, or adjust sequences to make meaning more coherent. Listeners influence the shaping process through expressions, questions, or silence. Over time, the memory evolves into a story that reflects both past experience and present understanding. This continual reshaping shows that language is not only a record of life, but a sculptor of inner history. Through storytelling, humans refine how they perceive the past and how they relate it to the world. As we come to the end of this quiet journey through the world of language, let yourself drift into the soft space that follows learning. You have explored voices, gestures, vibrations, stories, and all the invisible threads that connect living beings across distance and time. Each fact was a small window into the ways minds reach toward one another, shaping meaning through sound, movement, and imagination. Now there is nothing left to absorb or remember. Just breathe and let the thoughts settle like dust in a warm beam of evening light. If you enjoyed this gentle exploration, I invite you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, or share a thought below. It helps these calm journeys reach others who may need a soothing place to rest their minds. New videos are always on the way, each one a quiet step into another corner of science and wonder. For now, allow your shoulders to soften. Allow your breath to slow. Let the soft darkness around you become a comfortable space where nothing is asked of you. The world can wait until morning. You have done enough for one day. Close your eyes if you have not already. Let the last traces of wakefulness drift away. Let the gentle rhythms of thought fade into the quiet. Good night.